Well, welcome to Upgrade Automation with Production Validator. So I assume most of the people here are probably dealing with integration in one form or another. So you've probably dealt with having to go through the upgrade process. There's many different ways that can happen. We're going to cover a few of them. Over the last couple years, the group, this team, has been working on a way to enhance the way you go through the upgrade process. So I want to introduce a couple guys real quick. Scott Roth, Ohio State University, Wexner Medical, yes. And Justin Owens, Orlando Health. We are working on ways that can make your life a little bit easier when you go through the upgrade process. So we sort of put together a project. What we really wanted to accomplish was pretty simple. We want to be able to upgrade, compare the messages as they go through the system, and be able to filter out any of the noise. So, you know, everyone's used a diff tool. You understand how you might want to filter out fields. You don't want to deal with timestamps, things like that. The other thing, we wanted to eliminate, you know, the need for full integrated testing, because that's, if you've ever gone through the process where you really have to do the full integrated testing and you have to get the, you know, the resources and the specialists, and people are picking certain use cases that they want to test, inevitably you miss things. So basically we wanted to try to make this as much of an automated process as we possibly could. So obviously what we were just talking about, you know, spot checking, things like that just are never really a complete process. So we really wanted to use the tools that we already have inside of our product. It is a database, and we do have the ability to code. We have the ability to compare information within tables. So given that, we started down this journey, and really last year we had a process that we developed with Orlando that made some big changes for their process for upgrading. So I just want to go backtrack just a little bit to give you a little bit of background. And Justin, if you want to talk about what you did last year in terms of that.
I'm going to stand up so I can see the slide, and I'm hiding from some of you people.
Here, you can do this.
But last year we wanted to do a process, well, it's a couple years ago now. We wanted to do a process that we wanted to be able to take like-for-like messages and do a comparison of what it was in the old system versus what it was going to be after the upgrade. And so we had done this in the past in Cloverleaf, and it took a team of 5 people, 30 days of code freeze, and it was very process intensive, very labor intensive. And even after 30 days, we didn't get it 100% done. We still had some stuff we probably could have done better, but we really wanted to do that similar type of process, whether it took us 30 days or whether it took us a week. And luckily, with John's help and with, you know, some of the places we've got involved, we were able to run 3 days worth of messages, which was about 3 million inbound messages, and transform those into 12 million outbound messages, and then compare what they were in the old system and compare to what they would be in an upgraded environment. So we exported everything from the old system. We used some code that we wrote to rerun those messages in an upgraded environment, and then export them into a file, and we were able to name the file the exact same way so they could align in a diff tool, which was beyond compare. But then that took us a long time, you know, most of the week to do that, because as you're loading 12 million in files, you can imagine how long that takes to load into beyond compare, even if you're loading a subsection at a time. So we had, I think, 2 dedicated resources doing it all day, every day. And then we had 4 people that just jumped in and helped as they had time. And it still took us a week. Well, it took us a week, which was better than the 30 days. So that is significantly better than what we did in Cloverleaf. So John was very happy about that.
So we felt like it was really successful, and we gave this presentation last year. And I'm going to point to James, who's in the front row here, who was sitting in the presentation last year and pointed out that a lot of the manual steps that we had to do, even to gain, we were actually processing 10 times faster than what he had done in the past, but still we could have done so much more. And James got involved. He's a developer here at InterSystems. And for the last year, off and on, just as a team effort, we started working on this. And as you can imagine, so the old process, it was, there was significant preparation. We had some custom code. We had some things that were in place that, took a little bit of effort for setup, right? So James got involved. We started building actually he had something that was almost already ready for prime time, but we had some testing to do. So he got involved. We started doing some testing. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process. Basically what you would expect to see, it's an upgrade of an instance. We basically want to take a copy of messages that have been processed from your source system into your upgraded system, and then reprocess them and do a comparison, all right, using the database. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I'm pasting code that James wrote. I'm just pasting in the classes. I'm loading the library that would be the toolkit, if you will, right? And that's done. And basically, I'm going to, it generates a compare database, and then I'm copying the compare database from one MGR folder from the source system to the target. So it's pretty quick. So now I'm in the target system, and I'm going to run the same thing. I have to load the toolkit. So I check and make sure it's loaded successfully. And then we're going to do the comparison. I got to do this again. Here we go. So, and literally, I'm pasting lines of code. Eventually, this will probably just be one line of code, but for now, I want you to see where we are. As you can see, this is going through a comparison process. Now, I'm only processing, 70 messages, whereas these guys are processing millions and millions of messages. But this process is actually exactly the same thing they're doing. So the only difference is how long does the system have to work to do this? And if you look at the bottom of this, we have an HTTP line at the bottom, which is really, I cut and paste this from the load when I do the comparison, and basically it brings up the diff file. So this is right in, Google or in my web browser. And if you look here, I have like P&T, that's my difference, and I can actually run the visual trace and look at this, and mine's a little bit messy because I was playing with it, but the visual trace will show the messages just like they would if they were in the production, from the source system and then to the target system as well. We can also do skipping, like I was talking about, skipping fields. So I can add things to the skip list, as we call it, in the table. And for example, that P&T is MSH11. So as you can see, I've put in the values here where I say I want to skip MSH11. And so now if I go back and run the compare again, now that I've added some skip fields, zero issues. So we're able to run this entire process. As you can see, I actually just ran the entire process that they're running from A to Z, from beginning to end. The only difference in effort is how long the machine has to work to process the messages. So that's really, what we've been working toward, is to try and make this as efficient as possible. So I'm going to let Scott talk a little bit about why he's part of the team, I think. there's a reason I went after Scott for this.
Like you, I was at the Global Summit last year, and I saw Justin's presentation, and at the time, we were going to go through an upgrade from Cache 2018 1.3 to Iris. And I'm like, ooh, that would be nice tool for us to use, because then it would save my team a lot of time. So I've worked with John in the past. John knows my history.
I'll tell you about it sometime.
At Ohio State, while we do have a lot of just generic inbound and outbound through a DTL, we do other things as well, and that's what John knows me for. We have a lot of legacy Microsoft SQL Server databases that we query. And so that's where my expertise comes in, is that I've built a lot of BPLs, or BPL from hell that John calls it,
yes.
that goes out externally and grabs data and brings it in. So that's where my expertise comes in, is that I have several BPLs that John wanted to test this code through. So I used a DFT, our DFT namespace that we call it, and was running messages through that to test this code the same way that John and Justin and James have done it. But I used external JDBC to SQL. I used web services. I've used internal linked tables, which is still using JDBC, but from a cache standpoint.
So basically, I wanted him to try to break it, which he did on occasion, I think.
On occasion.
And then James would fix it right away. And that's the whole point, is that we wanted to go through this process and really push the limits. And when we joke about his BPL from hell, to give you an idea, I was his support person. I was his sales engineer.
First support person.
Yes. And he had sent me a BPL that he wanted me to look at because there was an issue. And the hair on the back of my neck stood up, because when I printed it out, it was 60 pages. So when I say the BPL from hell, I mean that. It was very scary.
It's rightfully named so, because if you try to run interface maps in Iris right now, it times out because it runs out of memory. It can't generate the map for it.
Yeah.
We were going, like I said, we were going from 2018 to 2022. So, highlighted on the slide, we ran into an issue with Indian, Big Indian being on AIX and going to Red Hat, it's Little Indian. So we, quickly figured out that problem along with some others.
Yeah. So again, the idea is we want to push this to the limit. This is not a piece of the product yet. It's, we're in this process of trying to make it as, bulletproof as we can. So anyway, I wanted to make sure that we were testing thoroughly. And, to do that, I definitely wanted to go through that BPL. So Justin.
In the process of trying to test it thoroughly, I really started hammering away at this and breaking it thoroughly. So I started at small scale with just about 1,000 ADT messages, and I just wanted to see it work, and it worked. So I thought, great, let's scale this baby to as much as I can, and I took a day's worth of messages, which was 1.6 million inbound messages, and I sent it through and tried it out. And so it became, those 1.6 million turned into 6 million outbounds. And we found issues where we didn't expect to find, that James didn't expect to code for, because we are sending the same message and splitting it into two different messages and sending it to the same operation. And James was like, why would you send the same message to the same operation? I said, well, because it's different. It's different. We split it for a reason, and it's different, and they wanted it that way. So, but that's something that James wouldn't realize how, or would think that anybody was doing. We are splitting a single message into multiple messages, and where the way he's doing comparisons was through a hash. Well, the hash matched. And the way we did a split, we removed the field that was showing that this was a completely different message. We've split on like an FT1 segment, and we removed the identifier of that segment so it looks like an identical message like you were resending from the source that got sent twice. And that's what we originally thought it was, and then we had to track through the messages and find out that it was an issue. So James has coded around that. We are still seeing our journals expand. So when you run 1.6 million messages through an environment, that's usually a day of messages. Well, obviously, when you shove that all in at once, your journals are going to go crazy. So we are seeing journals expand like like you would expect. And I am monitoring that, and I have to purge it every once in a while just because of the system I'm running on. I purge my journals on a fairly regular basis. And our message volumes, I kind of talked about that already. So I'm processing all this data all at one time, trying to get it to go through. We fixed another issue just yesterday. We were looking at this. I actually have it running on my laptop right now, trying to process these 6 million messages. I have it on the upgraded environment. So we are still trying to get through the process and get it exactly right at this high volume. So, but we are running it on like a Windows desktop.
Yeah.
That's a virtual desktop. So if you run it on a server, we are expecting better performance. And I think Scott's seeing a little bit better performance than what I'm getting, partially because he's doing smaller scale, but partially he's running on a server and I'm running on a Windows virtual desktop. So I think we're doing pretty good for what we're at.
Yeah, yeah. So, and again, this is to give you guys a preview of what's coming out soon. I think pretty soon we'll be able to give a toolkit that people who are going through the upgrade process will be able to use and be able to do these comparisons. I did put your screenshots in. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about these at all. You really sort of did.
So we can't, So that first one was where we were splitting an A17 message. So the first part is sending specific like there's a repeating segment, and they wanted to send the first set of segments in one message and the second set of segments in the second message. So that was the multiple translations going to the same, or the same message going to the same downstream multiple times. Yeah. The second set is where we were splitting those FT1 segments. So each FT1 gets its own MSH, gets its own message. And so the MSH and the PID segments are all identical because we're just copying, and we're just using the FT1 as a separate message. And there's only one field that identifies that FT1 as being different, and for whatever reason, we're not sending it to the vendor. So when you send it out, it looks like it's identical in some cases.
And one of the things I sort of skipped over at the beginning when we ran the process, because we're trying to run it at 100%. I'm selecting all the messages in the database, but you can actually select a percentage, date range. You could run on single interfaces, those kinds of things in the as we add more features. So this is where we were and where we are. This is Orlando Health, the legacy engine in 2021, 840 man hours. 30 days. Last year we got it down to 96 man hours in 5 days. And right now we have it at about 8 hours. And actually I'm exaggerating the 8 hours because I want to be cautious because you just saw how long it took me to do the process, right? The machine should be doing all the work. And then 3 days. So we're trying to get it to where, when you do an upgrade, you're not dreading, I've got to get all my resources in order, I've got to get all these things, set up so that I can actually get through this process. It should be, let the machine do the work, right? We shouldn't be.
And that resource of 8 hours is a single resource. So really, I should be able to do this whole thing by myself. I shouldn't need to involve my team. I shouldn't need to involve any external resources from the IT department, any other application resources from any other teams. It's me as the Iris person on my own, doing my own work, and really the machine doing the bulk of the work for me, and I'm just pull up that message viewer that John showed at the end and say, oh, yep, everything looks good, and move on. And 3 days later, we're ready to do an upgrade.
Yep. All right, lessons learned. I just want to make sure I put this in here in case we forgot. We did talk about big Indian, little Indian, multiple transformations on a single route, and multi-thread processing, which is something we're working on right now. So, we think things will improve as we go forward. We'll probably be a little bit faster as we go forward. I'd love to see us get to where, and I'm gonna think I got what else, where we can pick and choose, right? So pick and choose interfaces. One of the other things is, people who are doing the upgrade process, sometimes it's a migration as opposed to an upgrade. I wanted to point out that there are other tools that are in our toolkits that would allow you to do very similar processes for so if you already have our system and you acquire a new facility and you're going to convert them, there are things along the lines of what you just saw that will help you do that. So I just wanted to point those out and make sure that you're aware. you don't have to go through the whole manual process on a migration either. So there's just some tools, and there's other things available to you, and I just want to make sure that you are aware of that. As long as you were here, you'd probably be interested in that at some point. So what's next? I mean, really, our goals are, near zero effort upgrades. We really should be able to get there. Reduced effort migrations, those will never be zero effort because you just don't know what you got, right? So we want to get there in terms of making it as reduced an effort as possible, and obviously reducing risk because I mean, and my gray hair gives it away, but I was doing this 30 years ago, and we just didn't have the tools, and you would spend so much time and you still wouldn't find it all. So with this process, you should be able to let the machine do it for you. So that's really, the requirements is really pretty straightforward. There's nothing really unusual. Obviously, we're doing this with HL7 V2 messages. I'll convince James to do something else eventually. But for starters, we're going to do HL7 V2. And, it's really, because we're doing message database comparisons, we should be able to do any version to any version that is in the appropriate upgrade path. So, and to that point, I'm running Iris 2022 to Iris 2020, Iris for Health 2023.1. You were 2018?
I've done it both with 2018 on AIX to Red Hat 2022.
Yeah.
And I've also done it from 2022.1 to 2023.
And you're on Health Connect, so we're using different versions.
I'm doing Health Connect 2021.1.2, and right now it's like for like, so I'm trying to go straight, basically to get a good analysis of, without even doing an upgrade involved. I want to be able to see, does it work?
So far, we haven't really seen any issues in terms of, what database you're going from or to. But obviously, you need to make sure you're in a supported upgrade path. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
I haven't even gotten to Q&A.
Who let him in the door?
Okay. Another SE. Sorry, guys. This is one of my counterparts.
Can you hear me? Oh, there we
Yeah.
go. So it sounds like this specific utility is decoupled from the version that it's running on. So you could hypothetically run this, you could export it and put it on Ensemble, or you could put it on an Iris for Health 2019.1 if that was your target upgrade path.
So the only limitation to that, and James, please jump in if I'm wrong, the only limitation to that is the fact that there's certain dependencies on the code that was written, right? So there might have to be some tweaking of that, but generally speaking.
Well, and big Indian versus little Indian.
But you can do a conversion. But yeah.
So ultimately,
You know where I'm getting at, James. You could take this and put it on anything, right?
That's the whole reason why I did 2018 1.3.
Wait for the microphone, James. No, we want it on record.
That's true. Yes.
So ultimately, John's right. I mean, it's dependent on the code that we're probably using some of the new technology. We want it to work for the paths we expect people to be doing. Once we get all of that working, I don't see a problem spending some time to investigate the backward compatibility.
Right.
So if there are paths you're particularly interested in, bring those up to Aya and we can look at those first.
Ensemble 2010.
It's technically, but you got to get code.
Right, so you would have to go Ensemble 2010 to Ensemble, well, no, you can't jump from there. You'd have to go to Ensemble 2018, right? And then 2018 to Iris. Okay.
Yeah, but if it's only taking your machine 3 days to do it and you an hour.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything to help
Yeah.
get that process.
So technically, yeah, what you're saying, yeah, is that possible? Obviously, it's possible. I'm not making any promises I can't keep.
I mean, from doing it from 2018 1.3, I mean, we have run into some issues, and James has quickly fixed those.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for any hypothetical.
Yeah, I almost thought you weren't going to make it, so I was trying to push out. So, are there any other questions? Oh, yes, you have to wait for the microphone.
So we have a bunch of different interfaces, including X12 or even HL7 that turns into, say, custom JSON, all in the same production. Is that going to be ignored, so it'll just validate the HL7 pieces, as you said, or would it break it?
It does ignore them because we also have code
Yeah.
that does. I turned it off in my sample environment for now while I'm working through it, but.
In this version, I mean, really, we're just starting to build it out. So
Yeah.
in this version, it'll only do HL7 V2. Anything that you're interested in, you should bring up to Aya. Okay? Are you familiar?
It just ignores it,
It- It doesn't break it?
it doesn't break it, it just ignores it. So like,
Yes.
when I would run it through some of mine, I would have to restart my JDBC operations because it's automatically built to not start those. So,
Yeah, I have one question. So this is Burun from Atlantic Health, New Jersey, and Dimitri as well. So we are from same team. So we are going through the Iris migration from Linux. That's Iris 2021.1 to 2022.1. We are going through Iris Linux migration as well. So if we want to use this tool, can we use this, or
Yeah, that's very similar
Yeah.
to what Scott's doing. Yeah.
do we need to?
I think he's asking if it's available yet.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're
oh,
still
oh,
testing.
sorry. So we are still testing. I can't say whether or not we'll be able to give out a kit, by the time we leave here. But,
I'll have an answer.
Dimitri, he knows where I am. So if you want to reach out, after the conference, and we'll see what that timeline looks like. But I think we're fairly close, at least for beta, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Assuming I don't break it again.
Yeah.
Oh, give me time, I could.
Any other questions? Great. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Hey, John,
Oh, yes.
if nobody has a question about this, they'll,
Oh, no.
they had the PCL generator on your slide, so I figured it was fair game for questions. You opened the door for me. We don't have Health Connect at this point. We're
Yes.
looking into purchasing that from InterSystems. Obviously, we're coming from another engine. When is that generator going to be viable? It was in the
It
next.
is now.
It is
No,
right now.
It is currently.
Currently, okay.
Yes.
Because it was one of those next things we saw.
No.
on the slide.
But I was talking about that in terms of when you're doing multiple things, you don't have to just use this one tool. There's other tools available. So I was saying, using this in conjunction with some of the other tools we already have. So yeah, it's already available.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep. Great. Thank you, guys.